Mitch McConnell said to us last week that there were closed-door meetings going on between the Treasury Secretary, between Gary Cohen and House Senate leaders. Are there Democrats involved in those discussions, please, sir? And can you give us a sense of what's going on?
We have not been involved in those meetings, and the fact is I've written 2 bipartisan comprehensive federal income tax reform bills. They've been the only ones now in several decades, so I would very much like to see a bill written that would provide real relief to the middle class, that would create opportunities for everybody to get ahead, not just the 1%. But no, I haven't been involved in any of those discussions.
I want to ask you as well about some comments that were made by one person in particular, Judy Chu, a Democrat from California, saying Mnuchin has point blank said to her straight out that he doesn't agree with the border adjusted tax, that it's neither supported by the president. Even Paul Ryan seems to have softened. As far as you're concerned, do you think that's the way we're headed here, that actually there's not going to be a border adjusted tax?
Well, let's first of all call it what it really is. It is a grocery tax. I just think it'd be a real hit on middle-class people who are walking on an economic tightrope already, balancing their food bills against their fuel bills and paying for essentials. And for a lot of those folks, they can't absorb extra costs. And I think this would really be a body blow to the middle class, and I call it for what it is, a grocery tax.
And of course, we do know the retailers are fighting back against that BAT as well. Senator, you coined the phrase the Mnuchin rule, referring to the Treasury Secretary's statement in November that the White House's tax plan would provide no absolute tax cut for upper income earners. Now, we know Mnuchin has been testifying on Capitol Hill this week. Based on what you've heard, Senator, is the White House still committed to the Mnuchin rule?
It sure doesn't look like it. When he is asked, and he's been asked in both the House and the Senate, he doesn't restate that commitment. When I heard it originally, I said, this sure sounds like a step in the right direction. No absolute tax cut for the wealthy. And so I asked him about it, and I said, look, from this day on, we'll call it the Mnuchin rule. And he sort of thought that was an appealing idea, almost like the Buffett rule. But it didn't take very long for him to start walking it back. And I think that's very important. And certainly when you think of some of what is in their tax reform proposal, and right now it's only 1 page, it's shorter than the typical drugstore receipt, this special 15% pass-through rate, which would allow the fortunate few to, in effect, convert ordinary income into, in fact, investment income to be eligible for this special rate, could really be susceptible to abuse, and it comes right at the time when the president has proposed cutting resources for tax enforcement.
I guess we have to see what happens when that page gets a bit longer, sir. But I want to move on to Robert Comey and whether or not you're hearing anything about whether the special counsel could limit or prevent James Comey from testifying to your committee.
Well, I can't get into committee deliberations, but what's important for your viewers is our function is very different than Bob Mueller's function. Our function is to do an investigation, to inform the American people as to what happened to their democracy, and do it in a way that protects what's called sources and methods, information that needs to be classified. Bob Mueller has a very different function, is a criminal one, and there is a process called deconfliction. It's kind of a fancy word for making sure that people work together and don't trip over themselves. And so I think it's very important that both efforts go forward.
Very quickly here, Senator, what indication do you have, if any, that the White House will claim executive privilege over Jim Comey's memos and conversations with the president?
I can't get into any kind of committee deliberations, but certainly if you look at press reports, and this has been the case for a number of months, this president has quite a sweeping notion of his powers. For example, we're finding that when those of us who are ranking members of key committees send letters to the various kinds of agencies, we are completely stonewalled. We can't get any information from those agencies at all. It's kind of like the separation of powers is just being rewritten so that all the power is in effect with the executive branch. So I can't comment on any kind of matters that relate to what we talk about in the Intelligence Committee, but certainly people can know from the press reports and the example that I just cited, this president certainly has sweeping notions of his powers, and in my view, if you look at the kind of thing he's done with the ranking members and stonewalling requests for information, he's really rewriting the separation of powers.
So I know you have to leave very quickly, so I want to ask, if we look at the whole array of things going on right now for the government, one area where the Democrats and the Republicans should be able to work together is on tax reform. So to finish where we started, why are the Democrats being excluded from those discussions behind the scenes? Why are you being ignored?
Well, you'll have to ask Mr. Mnuchin and the president.
I'm asking you.
And, well, I don't know. And particularly odd is that I have worked very closely over the last few years with two conservative Republicans who are quite close to Mitch McConnell, and we produced tax reform proposals, real legislation with bill numbers and detail that in effect would show that you can really provide meaningful tax relief for the middle class, create red, white, and blue jobs that are for Americans, and give everybody the opportunity to get ahead. So we've made it clear that we think that the American people are demanding that the Congress, on a bipartisan basis, work on key issues like taxes and health care, and I've got a record that shows it.